Welcome to the Ignite Podcast, where we introduce thought leaders and subject matter experts that you'll want to consider for your next corporate event. Now, here's your host, Dennis Worden.
I'd like to welcome to the Ignite podcast a good friend, a great speaker, a great communicator on leadership, but a hero of mine. And it's not often that you get to interview a hero and to call him your friend as well. And so, Lee, welcome to the Ignite video podcast.
Thank you, Dennis. Good to be with you and to see you in this manner. It's always great to see you face to face, but in this way too. And I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. And as we were talking a bit earlier, this is a unique time for our nation, for the world. And what a lot of our viewers may not be aware of is that as an Air Force pilot, jet fighter pilot, you were shot down over Vietnam and spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war. And I believe on March 14th, you celebrated an anniversary of coming back home in freedom.
Yeah, last Saturday was our anniversary of freedom for my group. We came home in several groups over a period of 60 days. But for me, I'd been there 1,955 days. And then to be able to walk out into freedom and come back home and to be able to do that and to be healthy enough and mentally capable of doing that and to have a great life. What a blessing that's been to go through that. I thought about that last week as all of this hit us. It's like, this kind of reminds me of the day I had to jump out of my good airplane, which is no longer good because it had been blown into several pieces, and take the parachute landing down into enemy territory. My life changed just instantly. It changed so much. And yet, first I fell back on my faith, but then in my training and the discipline and our organization was able to make it through that. And so now as we face these difficulties, that kind of went through my head. We're kind of in a similar situation that life is very different.
Yeah. And this video cast goes out to several thousand business leaders, owners, operators, managers, and with a lot of their employees or brokers are working from home. And they have children that are no longer in school. They have parents, grandparents that they're concerned about. So there's anxiety, there's fear, there's isolation. I mean, you spent a number of years in isolation. And what would be your word of encouragement? Both, how can a business owner, leader, lead his or her people during a time like this? And then, how do we react as citizens, as human beings to such a radical change?
Yeah, I think, leadership always comes back to three things as the foundation. First is your character, your integrity, your values. And second is getting the mission done. And third is taking care of the people. Sometimes we have to switch and put one more important than the other, especially between results and relationships. So at this point, you want to be sure to be attuned to your people and what they're going through, but you also want to remember your duty. And what is your duty as the leader of your organization is to keep it going if you can. You be creative, work with your team, come up with ideas, use the technologies that we have today to maybe carve out a new way of thinking and a new way of operating to serve your clients and to serve your products and services, but also making sure that you are aware that for a time, our people are going to be under a lot of stress. The life's going to be different for them. And so supporting them, encouraging them, keeping them positively engaged so they understand that we can get through this together. We can work through this and we'll come out the other side. I think as a POW, once I made it past, once I was captured, and after the first few hours of shock, then I started thinking, okay, I just got to make it through today. And then I got to make it through today, the next day. And pretty soon I started walking my way through those days. And some of them, there was a lot of terror and fear. There was torture, there was hunger, just a lot of those kind of things. But what we learned is that the human physical body, mind and emotions are so much more resilient than we ever think. I mean, we had guys in there. One of my buddies, he got shot in the leg and it shattered his ankle some. And that place on his leg, he had no health care and for 5.5 years. And so it would always ooze uh, fluids and pieces of shrapnel would come out from time to time. But he made it through. And when he came home, the Air Force made him a boot, and they fixed his ankle surgery, made him a boot. He went back on flying status. So, it's just one guy had both arms broken and his jaw broken. And the other guy fortunately, they let another guy in with him and he fed him and took care of him. We had guys that nursed other guys. And I mean, even to the bathroom, everything you can think of, they took care of each other, but we made it through with almost no medical care, the scarcest of food at times, but we hung together and we made sure that we encouraged each other, and we knew that we would risk our lives to get to someone who was in isolation and say, man, they got you locked up in isolation, but we're together. We're with you. We're not going to leave without you. You're important to us. Yeah. It's so important. I think just knowing that you're in a community that cares, and then living by your values is so important. We were committed to live, to be military leaders, to be military warriors, and to return with honor. And that was our daily battle, was to return with honor. It meant being true to our commitments. It meant that our courage was tested a lot, but we found we had a lot more courage than we thought. And especially, I think being in community gives us more courage because we don't feel like we're fighting alone.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great word. That's a great word for each one of us listening in. And thanks for sharing that. And when you came back from Vietnam as now a free man, you continue to serve in the Air Force, and then you've gone into more of a public role as a leadership trainer, speaker, author. In fact, I've got a copy of your latest book here, which I've enjoyed reading through, called if I can get it on the camera here, right? But anyway, it's called the Leadership DNA, and all of your books have fresh material. You're just not regurgitating something old and over and again, but fresh content. But what is that unique leadership experience that you bring to corporate America as you come out as both a speaker and a trainer?
Well, I think, first of all, I've had a lot of leadership experience, but it all is grounded in the watching and observing and living with those leaders in the POW camps, because what they did, they were so genuine. They didn't pretend. They had no ivory tower. They had no big desk. They took the worst of the treatment and bounced back and bounced back. And they set an example of being vulnerable, being with us and letting us know what they'd gone through and what had happened. But they also showed us how to bounce back and to fight, to live by your values, and to do the things, the hard things that you have to do as a leader. So that was my first experience. And then I served as a leader in the Air Force for many years at various levels. And being a leadership consultant now for 21 years, I just see so much about it. It really comes down to character, courage, and commitment. And most leaders fail because they feel insecure, and either they overreact by showing a lot of ego to cover their insecurity, or they draw back and hide and withdraw and go passive when they should be stepping out and confronting or dealing with issues. So that insecurity, I think, is the biggest thing, is their identity. Knowing yourself is the first thing. You've got to know yourself objectively. And then with that, you know your strengths, you know your struggles, and you start to get that overall 360 picture of yourself. Then you learn to manage yourself. And that really brings a lot of maturity when you have that kind of self-awareness. Then you can be genuine, and then people will trust you. Of course, you have to be competent in your field. But even if you're competent in your field of your profession, but if you don't know how to lead and be honest with people, be vulnerable at times, but also be strong and to be tough when you need to be tough, and kind, all the time too. It's like being a good parent. You have to know when to be tough, and you have to always be loving and kind and respectful. And it's kind of that way in the workplace. So that's really what I try to point out. But you can't do any of that without courage, because your doubts and fears will just take you out. You just look at our culture today where people do dumb things every day. We all struggle. I struggle with this. Okay. I'm a business guy. I'm a father, a husband. I'm in a battle always to be the kind of person that I'm committed to being. And so I think that's where we are. We have to get in that battle, and it takes courage.
And I love your logo behind you: courage, character, commitment.
Yeah.
And you've gone around the world with this message.
Hmm.
And what is it that you've learned as you've shared, in different cultures worldwide, that you then bring back into corporate America, that helps not just the ownership or the leadership of the company, but those that are sitting in the seats that have
Hmm.
come to hear your message on leadership?
I think it really comes back to knowing who you are and what you stand for. And if you have clarity on that, then you can be stronger, you'll have more courage, and you'll be able to grow. That's the whole idea of my world is, I'm a senior citizen. I'm one of those that's more vulnerable right now than the average guy. You and I are up there. But to be able to continue to grow and to continue to learn how to be a better person and how to be a better leader, we can all do that, whether you're a 15-year-old or a 55-year-old or whatever. We can always grow and get better. And our people deserve that. Our children deserve that. Our teammates deserve us to grow. But when we do that, we also set an example for them. And they see that if we're growing, then maybe they can grow.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm specifically concerned about the next generation of leaders. And so everything that we do in our leadership development company right now is focused toward helping the current generation of leaders grow and take this next generation with them as they're growing and grow together. So rather than just send the leaders to training, we want to actually get the leaders involved. And that's why we're developing a lot of online courses right now from our content and from my books to help leaders develop their people and do it all together. I think it's a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah. What I'm just curious, as we've been talking here, and you're talking about the next generation of leader. What are you reading? What kind of books are you reading, or what book are you reading specifically right now that you feel is like an aha type of a book?
Well, I'm always reading several books, it seems. I read one in the morning and one at night. uh, I love to read. It's funny, I didn't read growing up. Uh, I didn't read until probably I got in my 40s. And then I started reading, and I love to read. I just can't get enough. Right now, I'm rereading a book I read a few months ago. It's really set up to be a year-long, week by week journal reading, but it's called Lessons in Leadership by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Rabbi Sachs was the senior rabbi in the United Kingdom for many years, and now he is probably one of the best leadership writers I have ever read.
Mm.
And it connects to my faith. I'm Christian, he's Jewish, but his writing is so in line. It's based around the Torah. And these wonderful leadership lessons from Moses and Miriam, his sister, and just amazing lessons. So it's so well written too, and they're short lessons. You can about 4 or 5 pages, so that's really good. I'm also reading a book by another speaker friend of mine, Mary Kelly, Why Leaders Fail. And the first chapter is they fail because of lack of vision. And I read that and I said, I need to think this through. But it is so practical
Yeah.
and so well done.
Yeah.
I really am enjoying that. And then I always enjoy, I go back and reread books a lot. And one of them is Patrick Lencioni's book, The Advantage. It's one of the best leadership books I've ever read. And I use it, I quote it a lot in my books. And of course, I quote Jim Collins a lot, and I go back and read some of his stuff. And then one of my POW buddies, this guy was there 8 years. Well, 4 weeks short of 8 years. He was married with 2 daughters. His wife was 6 months pregnant with a son. He was shot down and captured in 1965. He was POW number 5. He was there all these years. I was a cellmate of his for a couple of years, and a wonderful human being. He's 90 years old, and his book he and his wife have a book that just came out last November called Tap Code. He was the guy that brought in the tap code that we used to communicate to
Mm,
tap on the walls, and it's a great book. So those are some of the books
wow.
that, and I did get to write the foreword to that book, so uh, I really knew it well.
Yeah. Well, and you used a word vision,
Mhm,
and as a speaker, I mean, you get, here in Atlanta, you go down to Hartsfield, right? You get on a jet, United or Delta or somewhere, and you go somewhere in the country, and you deliver your message or you do your training,
mhm,
but and then you make the trip back home again, right?
mhm,
What is
mhm.
it that is you and what's your vision for doing that? To leave home to go do that um, what is that not just the vision for yourself, but what is your hope for those that are part of that weekend or of that event? Your vision for them to be a different leader, a different person.
Yeah.
What is it that really drives and motivates you?
The fundamental piece of my company's name or a brand name is leading with honor. So that is the fundamental message that I want to get out above all else is that if you will fight to do the honorable thing, you're going to come close to being the person you want to be. You're going to set the example for others. You're going to build our culture and help preserve our culture because we so desperately need that today to have honorable leadership, to have honorable characters in charge of businesses. So that is the fundamental piece. And by the way, I don't have to work. I love to work. And I keep working mainly because of the message. And the big message, of course, is leading with honor. But beyond that, it's to help people get a foothold of understanding who they are, that nobody's perfect, that we all have room to grow, and part of your responsibility as a uh, honorable person, but also as a good citizen, but also to yourself, is to grow and become more of the person you want to be. Your identity is so important. So I talk more and more about identity because I'm become to believe that that is so important for each one of us to know who we are, to
Mm,
know how we're different, to know how we're like, to know our values, to know what we want to be, and to work toward being that.
yeah, yeah. Well, as we kind of wrap up our time together here, I know you're a CSP. What in the world does a CSP mean?
In 2012, when my Leading with Honor book came out, that was the first book I'd ever written. I'd written a couple other books, but where it really brought in the POW stories. And every chapter of that book has a story in the POW camp and then a shift. Here's a lesson. And then here's how that lesson applies in today's workplace. So when that book came out, a friend of mine who had been in the National Speakers Association for many years. At that time, I think he was head of the Colorado National Speakers Association. And he said, Lee, you need to become a professional speaker. You need to join NSA speakers and really grow that part because you have a good message. And he kept bugging me. And finally, I joined. And sure enough, that was a great thing because I've been so blessed. They have a real pay it forward mindset there. So a CSP is someone who's been a speaker for more than 5 years, who has documented speeches to what group and who the contact person was. So I had a spreadsheet with all that on, and a certain level of revenue in public speaking every year for those 5 years. And once you've got all that documented, then you can become a certified speaking professional. Now, you have to go through a pretty rigid screen to make sure everything is done properly. And then you have two of the established speakers review your videos, and some of them may even call your clients to make sure that it all looks good and works out. And then you become a certified speaking professional.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know, Lee, you have spoken for Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies. You've spoken before some of the who's who in the military command, and and you're brought back again and again. So you're delivering the goods. What message would you have to give to an event planner or a company owner president, CEO that says, here's why you ought to have me come in and just spend some time with your people?
I think one is I have a different message that inspires people. They cannot imagine what it's like to be a POW. And so when I give them that setting and they see that we were able to make it through and come out the way we did, and our people from the POW camps have done really well from Vietnam, that inspires them to be more resilient. So many people tell me, I don't have many bad days now. Every time I have a bad day, I think about what you went through, and it gives me a more positive attitude. It gives me an attitude of being grateful. So that's one thing. It's a kind of a different message. Number two is the lessons from the POW camp that I weave into this presentation. They're built around stories that I think they can remember. They might remember one story that they take out of there with them that they picked out that kind of hangs with them, that they can go back to and say, they did that there. This is what I need to apply here in my life and my situation. I think that's the main thing. The interesting thing is whether it's speaking to high school kids, Cub Scouts, or seniors, I spoke to 600 or 700 CEOs and directors at the National Association of Corporate Directors several years ago. It doesn't matter what level the group is, they seem to connect with my message, and that has just blown me away. Women, I talk a lot about men in the POW camp, but the women love that message almost more than the men. So it's really, I've been excited. I've been blessed to have a message that people really want to hear.
Yeah. Well, Lee, thank you for using your story to impact the lives of literally thousands and thousands of people, and including mine. And so I appreciate you. And for those that are watching our video podcast, I encourage you to contact us at www.igniteadvisorygroup.com. Or you can contact me, Dennis Worden. It's D Worden, DWORDEN, at igniteadvisorygroup.com. And we'll do everything possible to help you get to even know better why Lee Ellis would make a great speaker for your company and organization. So, Lee, thank you so much for taking this time out of a busy day and a crazy world that's going on right now to share with our audience.
Thank you, Dennis. I think we're all keeping busy, and that's one good thing POWs did. We would do math problems, memorize poems, anything to keep busy. You got to keep busy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Dennis.
You bet.
See you.